Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. We've got a really compelling stack of sources today. Things like detailed NATO Parliamentary Assembly reports, analyses from the Institute for the Study of War.
hmm
Our mission,
Yeah.
well, it's to deep dive into this whole shifting landscape of European security, especially, after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Right.
We're going to try and distill the core insights, basically give you a shortcut to understanding these really complex geopolitical chess moves. Let's jump in.
Okay, so to really get where we are today, we kind of need to rewind a bit.
Okay.
Back to those massive changes across Europe after the Cold War ended. The sources we have really paint a vivid picture, don't they?
They really do. Yeah, the collapse of the Soviet Union after '89, it wasn't just like one single event. It was more this cascade of changes, huge changes reshaping Europe.
Yeah.
You saw the communist regimes falling apart all across Eastern Europe. Think about the Berlin Wall coming down in November '89 or Hungary opening its border, those quick transitions in Poland, Czechoslovakia.
Right, iconic moments. Exactly. And then Ukraine's secession, December 1st, 1991, that basically signaled the end, the real end of the USSR itself. What's fascinating, I think, is just how fast that old order crumbled. And it led to this, well, the scramble for new ways to find stability and security.
So Europe's changing dramatically.
Yeah.
And NATO, which, let's remember, was set up specifically to counter the Soviets, finds itself in this totally new world.
Yeah.
How did it adapt?
Well, it adapted significantly. Between 1999 and 2020, you had 14 additional members join. These were countries from Central and Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
They were looking for military security, sure, but also political stability after being under Soviet influence for so long. Now, there were, and honestly still are, some pretty intense debates about the consequences of this expansion, security, political, societal.
At that.
And it does raise a key question. Like, how did this expansion, which was meant to stabilize things, maybe also unintentionally lay some groundwork for, well, future tensions?
And fast forward to February 2022, Russia's invasion of Ukraine seems like a huge catalyst for NATO, right? We saw Finland join quickly in April 2023. Sweden's application is moving along. How's that changed NATO's thinking?
Oh, absolutely. It really forced the alliance to enhance its deterrence. They adopted new regional defense plans,
Really?
specifically aimed at countering the Russian threat.
Makes sense.
What's interesting here, I think, is it shows NATO's, remarkable ability to adapt to these changing security situations. But it also highlights that its core identity, rooted in shared liberal democratic values, is still seen as its main strength when facing these kinds of challenges.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's look at Russia. The Institute for the Study of War reports. They give us a really detailed look at Russia's current strategy, their ambitions. It seems pretty clear this isn't just about Ukraine for them anymore.
Indeed. Yeah, President Putin's his theory of victory, it's really based on a brutal war of attrition.
Attrition, okay.
Yeah, he's aiming for gradual advances, inch by inch along the front line, stopping Ukraine from launching counteroffensives, and just trying to sustain his own operations despite, frankly, enormous losses.
And the data on that's pretty stark, isn't it?
It is stark. Russian forces between January and May 2025, they gained only about 14.3 square kilometers per day. And get this, they suffered roughly 96 casualties for every single square kilometer they seized back in January.
96 casualties per square kilometer. Wow.
Yeah. This kind of brutal math shows just how unsustainable that strategy is, how little is actually gained for such a massive human cost. But despite this, Putin is explicit. He demands any peace deal means Ukraine gives up all of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kherson Oblasts, and Crimea recognized as Russian.
And he even talks about Novorossiya.
He does. He refers to Novorossiya, which basically covers all of eastern and southern Ukraine, including Odessa as an integral part of Russia. So the ambition is huge.
That definitely paints a picture of a very long game. What are the sources saying about how Russia is actually preparing internally, society, economy, for what looks like a really protracted fight?
Well, Russia's clearly digging in for the long haul. You had NATO's General Secretary Mark Rutte assess back in June 2025 that Russia might be capable of attacking NATO within, say, 3 to 7 years. President Zelensky suggested by 2030.
Right.
And you see it in their military reforms. They're standing up new Moscow and Leningrad military districts, reorganizing naval infantry brigades into divisions by 2025. This reflects long-term prep for a potential conventional war with NATO.
So it's bigger than Ukraine.
It seems that way. It looks like Russia's reorienting its whole state apparatus for a sustained, maybe even broader confrontation. These internal shifts are just as critical to watch as the battlefield. And the defense industry is really naturally a massive push there. They apparently tripled their overall drone production for 2025, launched over 28,743 Shahed drones since February 2022. Just in June 2025 alone, it was 2,736.
That's huge numbers. What's that, like 90 a day?
Roughly, yeah. It's a relentless aerial assault, trying to deplete Ukraine's air defenses, terrorize people. Putin himself talked about integrating civilian and defense sectors, even mentioned AI and machine learning and drones.
And society itself.
Internally, Putin declared 2025 the year of the defender of the fatherland. It's about militarizing society, expanding military patriotic education, putting war veterans into government jobs through programs like Time of Heroes. It's a whole-of-society effort.
And beyond the battlefield tactics and strategy, there's the human cost, the violations of international law. The reports mention this continues.
Horrifically, yes. The UN OHCHR, that's the UN Human Rights Office, they reported 106 credible allegations of Ukrainian POW executions by Russian forces just between late August 2024 and May 2025.
Oh my gosh.
And Ukrainian officials reported 7,730 cases of Russian forces using chemical weapons against Ukrainian forces and civilians since February 2023, with a spike of 767 cases in March 2025 alone. That's a clear violation of the Chemical Weapons Convention.
Just staggering numbers. So, shifting to diplomacy, or the lack of it, the sources show a really clear split in how Russia, the U.S., and Ukraine even approach the idea of peace talks. What are the main sticking points?
Yeah, the differences are fundamental. U.S. President Trump called for a longer-term ceasefire before peace negotiations even start. That's a sequence Ukraine has always supported, as a path towards a just peace.
Okay, ceasefire first.
Right. But Russia, they've consistently rejected that. Putin, other officials, they've repeatedly refused any full ceasefire proposals. They insist any peace deal has to address the root causes of the war.
And their definition of root causes.
Well, they define it as NATO supposedly breaking promises not to expand east, and Ukraine supposedly discriminating against Russian speakers. They also claim President Zelensky isn't legitimate because elections weren't held in 2024, even though the Ukrainian constitution actually prohibits elections during martial law.
Right.
You even had Medinsky, a presidential aide, basically say Russia's prepared to fight for a year, 2, 3, however long it takes, even forever.
Forever. Wow. So it really makes you wonder, can meaningful talks even happen when the starting positions are that far apart and one side says they'll fight forever?
It's a critical question. It really highlights the deadlock.
Absolutely. So given that deadlock, what happens next? We heard the U.S. recently paused weapons supplies, which the sources say could help Russia gain ground faster.
Yeah.
But then you see Europe and other allies really stepping up. What does that shift mean for Ukraine's ability to defend itself?
Well, those delays in U.S. aid in late 2023, early 2024, they definitely created problems, allowed Russia to make gains. But you're right, Ukraine's European partners are providing substantial support now. It's a crucial counterweight.
Like what specifically?
Okay, so the UK gave Ukraine its first chunk of money generated from frozen Russian assets, nearly $1 billion. Canada provided $1.4 billion for equipment, helicopters, drones, vehicles, ammo, plus a $1.6 billion loan for rebuilding infrastructure, and significant sanctions, too. The EU proposed this Rearm Europe plan back in March 2025. The goal is to mobilize close to 800 billion euros for defense investment. They're letting member states spend more, offering loans.
800 billion, okay.
Yeah. The Netherlands put in 400 million euros. Belgium committed €1 billion annually until 2029. And several countries are chipping into this Danish model.
The Danish model, what's that?
It's interesting. Allies directly pay for Ukrainian-made weapons for Ukraine. So it helps their defense and their own defense industry.
Smart.
Yeah. So the bigger picture here is you see the West, especially Europe now, committed to strengthening Ukraine's military. That's seen as the main security guarantee against Russia, even with shifts in U.S. aid.
And it's not just military stuff, right?
Yeah.
There was that interesting point about a U.S.-Ukrainian mineral deal and Russia trying to counter it. How does economics play into this?
Right. So the Trump administration, the idea is to use this mineral deal to create concrete U.S. economic interests in Ukraine, to shift Ukraine from just being an aid recipient to more of an economic partner, make the relationship stickier, maybe.
Okay, makes sense.
But Russia is actively trying to undermine it. They're promoting potential U.S.-Russian rare earth mining projects instead, trying to position themselves as the better commodity trader. The sources suggest this Russian approach, though, it wouldn't really deter future aggression. It's more about resource control for them.
Interesting dynamics. Now, looking even broader, beyond Ukraine, Russia seems really active in reshaping its global alliances, trying to build like an alternative to the Western-led system. What does that evolving map look like?
Yeah, Putin explicitly proposed this new Eurasian security architecture back in April 2025. It's built on groups like the Union State with Belarus, the STO, CIS, KIO, BRICS,
All the acronyms.
all the acronyms. And the explicit goal, according to Putin, is to destroy NATO and weaken the West. You see it playing out in several deepening relationships.
That jazz.
Okay, China. Security ministers met in March 2025 to strengthen ties on counterterrorism, crime. China's helped Russia's war effort, sanctions, evasion, rhetoric, maybe even direct military aid while trying to look like a neutral mediator.
Like the balancing act.
Exactly. And get this, Chinese military officials have reportedly visited the Ukrainian front line to learn lessons for future wars. And there are apparently at least 155 Chinese nationals fighting for Russia as mercenaries.
Wow. Okay, who else?
North Korea. Russia's giving them drone and missile tech. In exchange, North Korean troops fighting in Kursk Oblast inside Russia. They signed a comprehensive strategic partnership in June 2024. And in December 2024, word came out. Russia agreed to send fighter jets, MiG-29s, Su-27s, to Pyongyang for more troops.
Direct trade. Okay. Iran.
Putin and the Iranian president signed their own comprehensive strategic partnership in January 2025. Though, interestingly, it apparently lacks a mutual defense clause. So cooperation, but maybe limits.
Not quite a full alliance then. And Africa.
Russia's cementing ties with that alliance of Sahel states, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, agreed to provide modern weapons, military training for a joint force of about 5,000 troops. It's clearly about building a counterweight to Western influence there.
But it's not all going Russia's way, is it? Some traditional relationships seem strained.
No, not all smooth sailing. You see clear signs of divergence. Armenia, for instance. They're actively boosting ties with the West. Launched a strategic partnership commission with the U.S., approved an EU accession bill.
And Russia's reaction?
Russia pulled its border guards from the Armenia-Iran border checkpoint in December 2024. They've been there for over 30 years. That's a significant move.
Yeah. Any others?
India is another big one, traditionally a huge buyer of Russian arms, but they've sharply cut back orders from Russia. Instead, they're buying more from Western suppliers and, crucially, building up their own defense industry. So even long-standing ties are shifting under all this pressure.
Okay, finally, let's touch on the information war and what's happening inside Russia itself. The sources show the Kremlin is really focused on controlling the narrative, unifying society behind this war effort. What are they doing?
That's right. The Kremlin is definitely intensifying efforts to control the information space. You have the Russian censor, Roskomnadzor, testing its sovereign internet, basically more control, especially in regions with ethnic minorities. They're cracking down hard on critical Telegram channels.
Trying to seal off alternatives.
Pretty much. And they're apparently set to equate censorship violations with extremism and terrorism, which effectively creates a kind of state ideology, bypassing their own constitutional bans on that. It's not just about silencing dissent. It's about actively manufacturing a unified story to keep public support going.
And economically,
Yeah.
Putin projects strength. But what's the reality?
Well, despite that outward projection of, a strong, stable economy, Reuters reported back in January 2025 that Putin himself is actually concerned about distortions in the Russian economy caused by the war, and that some elites really want a negotiated end to it all.
Interesting internal tension there.
Definitely. And meanwhile, Ukraine's economy, even with the war raging, is showing more stable currency rates and actually higher GDP growth forecasts than Russia's. It's quite a contrast when you look at it that way.
So after digging through all this,
Yeah.
what does it all mean for you, the listener, trying to navigate this incredibly complex picture? We've taken this deep dive into NATO's response, Russia's strategy, the war itself, the diplomatic mess, the shifting global alliances. It's a lot.
It is a lot. We've seen NATO adapting, kind of reinvigorated strategically. We've seen Russia digging in for a long war, militarizing its society. The diplomatic track seems completely stalled. And global powers are definitely realigning, trying to secure their own interests in this, this rapidly changing world. The sources really paint a picture of maybe an enduring confrontation.
Right. So think about everything we've unpacked. Russia's clear long-term ambitions, this push for a protracted conflict, their efforts to build a whole new security architecture. What are the most critical factors, maybe the surprising ones, that you think will decide if Europe finds lasting stability? Or are we really entering a new era where this kind of confrontation just becomes the new normal, something to really think about?